Hi, friends. Welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 240. You are going to love this episode. It's one of my favorite people. I had the chance to interview Samantha Shank. I've interviewed her before, but she is back because Samantha she's just the best, and she leads this really rich life, and I wanted to touch base with her again. So we got on to talk about how homeschooling has set her up for success and for the lifestyle that she's currently living. Samantha is in her 20s. She's a homeschooled graduate who has done so many different things. She has her master's degree. She has traveled extensively, and we talk a lot about that in this episode. It's an inspirational story for those of you who have outside-the-box thinkers, creative thinkers, entrepreneurial thinkers who might want something different with their life. So I encourage you to pop those earbuds in and listen to this fabulous conversation with Samantha. Before we get started, I just want to give a special shout out and thank you to CTC Math for constantly being supportive of this podcast and all of the resources that we share. We couldn't do this without them, so if you get a chance, check them out, ctcmath.com, shoot them a message, thank them for the sponsorship. We really appreciate them. You'll hear more about them in the middle of this episode, but let's get on with this conversation with Samantha, because you are going to love it. All right, here we go. Hey there, I'm so excited to be here with you today and sharing with you one of my absolute favorite people, Samantha Shank. Samantha and I go way back to when she stalked me with the help of my daughter in a convention center. And she's been on the podcast before. She's been in the Learners Lab before. She has designed worksheets and resources and the anxiety toolkit that you see on my site. She is just like one of my absolute favorite people. Samantha, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Like you said, I've idolized you for up the past decade, so it's crazy that I consider you both a friend and mentor.
It's so fun. And just a little tidbit about that. Sam found me when she was learning about her own brain and giftedness and homeschooling. She found my site and read things that I was writing that resonated with her as she was a gifted kid homeschooling. And it just helped her understand herself better. And then she's now an adult who is running her own business and traveling the world as a solo traveler and has so many great stories. Like I said, she's taught some classes in the Learners Lab. She's designed resources for me when I had the idea for the anxiety toolkit. She did all of the graphic design for that and helped me. She and I learned together how you use the templates playing card companies send you to create a new product. So it's been very cool. And Sam and I are going to talk today about what she's done so many interesting things, building businesses and traveling the world on her own. And she credits a lot of that with being able to homeschool. And we're just going to kind of talk about that. So Samantha, why don't you get started first? Tell a little bit about yourself for those who didn't hear the first episode, though we will link it. And then just kind of talk about some of that idea of what homeschooling in your past has done for your current life.
Absolutely. So I was in the public school system for 4 years, and I just wasn't learning anything. And I not only was not really learning anything, I felt like in a lot of different ways, public school had stifled my creativity, it stifled my growth. I just remember being forced to be in a box. For example, we could only check out books that were exact our grade level, and they matched it up, and we had to like get approval to check out books outside of our grade level, even though I was well beyond my traditional grade level. I remember learning the spelling words A and I in third grade, which sounds completely crazy. I'm even looking at standards right now. But I just have always felt very advanced. And I told my parents, I'm like, hey, I want to try homeschooling. And at the time, they didn't know a lot about homeschooling, but they thought it was worth a shot because we couldn't afford private school. And at the time, I had two sisters. And so it wouldn't really be fair to put me in private school and then them not. So to make it even, we're like, okay, let's just try homeschooling. We went with the Abeka curriculum because we did not know any other curriculums that existed at the time. And I really ended up enjoying it. My sisters were homeschooled for several years. They ended up both graduating from a public high school, but I really appreciated the flexibility that homeschooling had offered me. When I was 14 years old, I turned my love of history and math into a blog. A year later, I met people like Colleen and I learned that you could make money vlogging. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that this could actually be a viable career. And then I later turned graphic design, web design, etc., into my full-time job. And then I went to college, graduated college early, and recently graduated with my master's in education and am traveling full time because of the business. Yeah.
That's so fun. And I just
There's a
love,
lot.
yeah, well, I love first how rich and diversified your life has been at such a young age. How old are you now? 23?
I'm 25.
Okay. I
I'm
couldn't
getting old
remember
on
if it
you.
was 20. You're getting old. Yeah, you're getting so old. But like in a quarter of a century, you're literally you're exactly half my age right now. Oh my gosh. Do you
Oh
realize that? Like I turned
no.
50 this year. So you're half my age. Crazy. Let's talk about who's getting old. But in that time, you've had multiple businesses and the idea of starting a blog and like Sam said, she started the blog because of her love of history. And so she started sharing information about history that she was reading about and then started designing worksheets and printables. When I first met Samantha, we were both speaking at a convention in California. And my daughter, well, actually, my whole family was there at that particular one. And Molly met her when she was walking around and Samantha said something about, "Oh, you're Colleen's daughter and I'm a fan of
Yeah.
your mom's," or something like that. And Molly's like, "Well, come on, I'll introduce you." And Molly introduced her as, "Mom, this is your biggest fan." And then we started talking, but it was so amazing for me to see this incredibly poised young woman selling her worksheets, her printables in print format at a booth in a convention. She'd like taken on the idea of being an exhibitor and branching out and networking. And then her doing that, Samantha doing that, showed Molly, who is 10 years younger, that she could do something like that. And so it was empowering for Molly to see a young woman like her, smart, articulate, well read, doing something young and showing her that she could do that. And so I've been taken by you for a long time for that reason and so many others. But over the last few years, you've become, I mean, really, for lack of a better term, a digital nomad, right? You've
Yeah.
work on the road and you're still designing printables, you're designing
Yeah.
websites, you're doing graphic design. And for a while, you were working on a new business, a solopreneur or solo traveler kind of business, and doing the work of traveling and getting all sorts of cultural experiences. Can you tell me a little bit about first what that's been like, where kind
Yeah.
of some of the things you've been, and then how you feel the all the exposure that you've gotten through and some of the skills you've gained through the things you did through your homeschooling and your self-directed learning have prepared you for this interesting last couple of years.
Yeah, so the last time I talked to you, I believe I was still in Indiana or I was just new to California. I couldn't remember, but so much has happened since then. And moving from Indiana to California was an incredible experience. Indiana is very monolithic. And when I moved out to California, I met so many people from all these different cultures. And one thing that I had, what I didn't have growing up, was when I told someone I was going to Sweden or that I had studied Hebrew, nobody batted an eye. No one thought it was weird. Nobody thought, "Oh my gosh, like what's wrong with you?" When I tell people I have a business, it's okay because everyone here has a business. I really appreciated that change in perspective from what I've been used to. And I was really thankful that homeschooling allowed me to foster my interests in a world that wasn't necessarily socially accepted. I remember being in Indiana and being in my small community and telling people I'm studying Hebrew. I always got the strangest looks, but it's crazy because that interest of studying Hebrew and sign language and World War II and the Holocaust in my teens has actually become an asset now. So about 2 years ago, oh my goodness, 2 years ago, I booked my first solo flight. It was my second time abroad and my first time in Europe. I booked a concert ticket in Stockholm, Sweden, and I had an amazing time. And since then, I have realized that I liked traveling so much and I, like, learned so much about myself and the world around me. It's one thing to read about it in books, but to experience these things that I've read about for, like, the longest time since I've been, like, a little girl and seeing these places in person, it was an absolute incredible experience. So,
So,
that
okay,
covered a little bit of it, yeah.
yeah, so you booked a flight to Sweden to see a
Yeah,
concert, and you
I'm
you said
crazy.
you learned a lot about yourself. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what kinds of things did you learn by just getting on a plane, going somewhere you'd never been before to see a musician that you loved, and then exploring?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is resourcefulness and being willing to think outside the box. So as homeschoolers, we are already somewhat out of the box considering we're not like adhering to the status quo of just sending kids to the public school system. We're already outside of the box thinkers in some way. And there were so many times when I needed that flexibility that homeschooling had offered me in order to just make it through the day. So the past year, my crazy adventures, including flights getting canceled, getting stuck at airports where I don't speak the language, my friend losing her passport in Beijing, China, being on a motorcycle in Malaysia and not knowing any Malaysian or how to ride a motorcycle, which was a questionable decision on my part, but it's okay. But it's all these opportunities. And I constantly looked back at my homeschool experiences and said, oh my gosh, remember that time when I didn't know how to do algebra and I had to research how to do it? Remember that time when we were stuck, we didn't have the money to pay for curriculum, we had to get creative with how we were going to pay for it. Do you remember that time when we things didn't go exactly as planned and we had to pivot in order to make them happen? So like those little events just reminded me like, oh my gosh, like there's so much to homeschooling that's not just like what it seems like in the now. It's not just about fighting with your kid about fractions and running them around endlessly to dance, baseball, gymnastics, swimming practice. Like there's so much more to it. And like those soft skills take you so far in life, even if you don't see them right now.
I was at an event. It was an intro to archery class today because as homeschoolers, we get to do really interesting and fun, strange things.
Yeah.
But I took my youngest to, I would have taken my 16-year-old as well, but there were only two spots available when I finally learned about the class and signed up. So because she has other things, she's the one that got booted from the agenda. Though it was so much fun, we are now talking about buying archery equipment for our backyard and looking for another intro class to sign her up for. So anyway, we were sitting there and I was talking to another homeschool mom about exactly that, the idea that she's got a kiddo who will be going into high school next year, and like so many homeschoolers who have not put somebody through high school yet, noticed I had an older kid and was asking if I thought about high school for next year. I'm like, actually, I've already got one in high school and graduated one, so it's just the next thing. But our conversation ended up like going towards that idea of soft skills and that idea of
Mhm.
pivoting and being resourceful, because the truth is, more and more now, you either don't need college to do something that is appealing to you, or you're going to go to college, but you're not actually going to be doing something in the field you graduated from. Instead,
Yeah.
the college experience is more about growing and learning to be an adult and a person and growing those skills to know that you can follow through on something. And then you end up doing something different anyway. So, our
Yeah.
most important job as homeschoolers isn't to teach them everything they need to do to be or know to be this perfect candidate. It's about teaching them how to be learners and critical thinkers and resilient individuals who can bounce back from that adversity and change the way they're doing something. I had a conversation with Molly. Oh gosh, it was a couple months ago. She was talking to me because a friend of hers was on the phone with her late at night, finishing studying for a history test. And Molly came to me the next day and was like, "You've totally failed me. I don't know those dates. She's a year
Oh,
younger than me in school. I don't know all of that. I wouldn't have been able to pass that test." And I'm like, okay, do you want to know history dates? Like, how would you find that out?
no.
And she's like, well, I'd read a book or I'd watch some documentaries. I'm like, go read a book, go watch some documentaries. Like, it's not about the content, it's about the knowing
Yeah.
how to get the information. And that is what I have taught you because you do know how to do that. So if it's important to you to learn the dates of all the battles so you can regurgitate them like your friend was regurgitating them, then go for it. But
Yeah.
my goal isn't to teach you all the history dates. My goal is to teach you that things have happened in history and we need to learn from those things and think critically about them. And if you want to
Yeah.
know the facts around them, read about it. And so, what you said about being in Malaysia, not speaking the language on the back of a motorcycle, and that, like, what do I do? It's not exactly the same, but what
Yeah.
we're doing with our kids to set them up to be thinkers can allow them to be exposed to all those different things.
Absolutely, and like you said, like, I just, like, loved all of, like, the words you used in that statement. Just resilience is, I think, is, like, a really big trait. Seeing other travelers and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, what do I do in this scenario?" It's like I said, my friend lost her passport in the Beijing airport. I do not speak Mandarin. She does not speak Mandarin. It was extremely confusing. The US embassy was no help, and it was just one of those scenarios. I'm like, "Well, we have to, like, problem solve through this scenario." Like, this is not something that can necessarily be taught in a traditional classroom. And I was just, like, so grateful that I knew like, we both knew how to get through the situation. And another, like, topic like, touching on another topic that you brought up, just that ability to your ability to be exposed to so many things when you're homeschooling, so that when you do experience something for the first time, it is not, like it's totally normal to you. It's totally normal to understand how people live, how people see the world, and it's just crazy to see the layers of learning that like are involved with like good travel or being a good adult, being a good like worker, and just being willing to constantly learn and evolve. Especially as like the workforce is like learning, like you like changing nowadays, like you just mentioned. Like so many jobs right now, like the tech world is absolutely crazy right now. And people are looking for those candidates that can think outside of the box, those candidates that can problem solve. It's not just about your degree or what you're currently good at, because honestly, in 5 years, the skills you're good at might not be relevant to the workforce or to the world. So it's very interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, my oldest and I were just talking about that recently. And I know that this is probably something that you've experienced and been exposed to, but I was reading about, I don't know, it was kind of like projections, not necessarily market projections, but working projections. Like when, and I'm kind of I border a couple different generations. Like my husband's 5.5 years older than me, and he's very firmly in the whatever the next one is. I don't even know what all the generations are, but he's in a different mindset. Like he is firmly entrenched in that generation of like I went to school to do a job that I'm going to do
Yeah.
until I retire. And I'm between that. Like it's
Yeah.
not I went to school to be a teacher and I taught for a while and then I consulted for a while and then I wrote in the education field for a while and I do different things. Well, that's even gone further. The kids
Yeah.
now, right? The ones beyond me, the next couple generations after that, none of them are going to have the same job from start to
Yeah.
finish. What is it? What is it like the average now is like changing jobs every like 3 to 5 years or something?
I think it's something like that.
And it's because of what you just said. The skills are evolving so quickly that what's happening
Mhm.
now and what you're known for now is going to be completely different in 5 years. And so, can you speak a little bit about that? Like, how can us as homeschooling parents, because most people listening are not former homeschooled kids who are making it in the world, but
Yeah.
how can they prepare their kids for the world you're currently living in with that like you're not going to school to be a
Yeah.
teacher for your entire career or an oceanographer or a marine biologist or whatever it's going to change.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the biggest, like, fallacies in the public school system. My friend is currently getting her MBA, her master's in business, and she was shocked at how outdated the content was. So she's been a business owner successfully for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and she was, like, texting me, she's like, "Samantha, oh my gosh, this curriculum, A, it's so outdated, and B, it's like, what the heck? Like, half of this information I could have gotten for free online, and here I'm paying for these courses, and it's not really assisting my life or my business in any way." So I just think like with schools and credits and like you probably like know how in order to get accredited, in order for laws to change, these things take years. And by the time those things are in place, the curriculum is obsolete anyway. But I think like the biggest thing is like teaching resilience, like your book Raising Resilient Sons in the background I've watched looking at. Yeah, I think like teaching resilience and like fostering an environment where it's okay to fail. I think that that's another big thing that I've learned on my own for the past 2 years. I call myself a recovering perfectionist and like a professional amateur. I think like over the past year and a half, I have really been like learning how to fail and fail well. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spank, she said that every night when having at the dinner table, her dad would ask her, "Hey, what did you guys fail at today?" And she just got used to failure being normalized. And then when she was going on to found Spanx and she was continually having problems getting into resale stores, she was okay with that failure and she was able to become like the first female billionaire or whatever.
Yeah, so I was going to say before you even said that you were a recovering perfectionist that you and I have talked about that before, and I think that especially with the demographic that most of the listeners here have, or at least many of them, with kids who are neurodivergent, gifted, twice exceptional, you're dealing with that kind of kid who doesn't like to fail. And it's really challenging. I would say, like Samantha said, the Sarah Blakely, I've heard her quote about that before. Ask your kids what they failed at, ask your kids what they could do better at, ask your kids, something good that happened, something bad that happened, something funny that happened, something totally embarrassing that happened, change
Yeah.
it up a little bit so they're not just looking at what's the best part of my day. And
Yeah.
then I would say if you're not sure how to do that, because it's hard. The first step as a parent would be to start making mistakes in front of your kids. Do
Yeah.
things that you fail at. Try new things. If you have never knit before or you're a terrible knitter, pick up the knitting needles and like be bad. Be bad in front of them as often
Yeah.
as you can. And then get your kids involved in stuff that everybody fails at. Like get them involved in
Yeah.
an improv class, get them involved with,
Mhm.
I think the acting that every one of my kids has been in at least a production or an acting class. And for some, it's stuck and others it hasn't. But every one of them knows what it's like to audition for a part and not get a part. Everyone
Yeah.
knows what it's like to be working in an improv duo or trio and have the person not feed you something that you could be successful keeping the scene moving for. And then you're the one that looks bad because they said something, but they didn't give you anything to work with. And nobody in the audience knows that that's how it works. And so give them opportunities to fail. I think that that's so, so important.
Yeah.
And then I think that we need to help our kids find trusted people to be themselves around. And so for
Yeah.
some, that's going to be their parents, build a relationship. Others, I haven't talked much about it. I don't have a great relationship with my family, and I know Samantha is the same way. I have a great relationship with people on my husband's side, and those are places I can go to when I'm struggling. And your kids need that too. So help them find people or be the person that they can come to when they failed without judgment so that you can help them keep going. Hey there. Okay, so you've heard me talk about CTC Math a lot on this podcast and in my newsletter because CTC is the math program we use and we love. I am a subscriber. I paid for my own subscription. I've been a customer for years. My children use it. I love CTC because it's adaptable. It is taught to mastery. It shows you their mastery level. You can move on when kids learn something. You can go backwards if they need extra help with something. You can do a couple grade levels in a year if you need to. You can skip grade levels. Every subscription includes access to K through calculus. So you can use whatever part you need. You don't have to be locked in to one grade level. I love, love, love that. I also love the people behind the company. They stand behind their product. If at any point you feel CTC is not working out for you, reach out to them and they will help you. They will get you squared away. They will help figure it out so you can be successful. And if you still don't think it's going to work for you, they'll give you your money back. You really can't lose using this program. It's the best there is. It really, truly is. It's the most adaptable, the most cost effective, and the greatest people. So check them out, ctcmath.com, and let them know I sent you because I want them to know how much we appreciate them. People have written in, like my friend Carol, to tell me that they are grateful that they heard about CTC Math because they had a kiddo who just wasn't moving forward. And by being able to kind of game the system and skip the areas that they already knew and move ahead towards other grade levels and complete a couple in a year, made their kid motivated. And so Carol reached out to tell me that she was grateful that she'd heard about CTC. If you have a story like Carol, I'd love for you to share it with me. Just hit reply in any of my newsletters or go over to the show notes for this episode where you can find a link to CTC Math and you can find a link to my contact page so you can reach out and let me know what you think about them because I would love to hear who else is finding success with CTC. If you're having any trouble with the program, reach out to CTC because they're great and they will help you in any way you need. All right, check them out, ctcmath.com, and let's get back with today's episode.
Absolutely. And I think that like I'm not a parent and I'm at a different age range in the like age range or whatever in the world. But I think that's really important, true. I'm in my early 20s. Social media is a big issue nowadays. And all the time I hear people my age talking about having like feeling that they're not good enough or not skinny enough or they're not working out enough or they're not having the perfect homeschool room enough because of social media. But I'm so thankful that I've cultivated a really strong social media presence. I've cultivated good friends, which I follow on social media, that encourage mistakes. They like showing the mess because it's like, hey, you know what? I was having a bad day today, or I was really stressed out today, and I didn't get the workout in. I didn't get the green smoothie, and I wanted the cheeseburger today. And so I love that realism. And I think, like you just said, like fostering that relationship in your community and fostering that relationship in yourself with your child is like incredibly vital for their future.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so funny because there's so much with social media, right?
Yeah.
And young people can't get away from it. I have a 21
Yeah.
year old and and
Yeah.
then all the way down, their world is very different than ours was. And I am a person who is on social media. And so I
Yeah.
get it better than some parents, but not, you can't
Yeah.
isolate them completely because it is going to be part of their world. And so helping them be secure, in who they are and cultivate those strong relationships and sense of self, so
Yeah.
they can keep going with that.
I
Um,
love your term sense of self. Like I think that's so important. Even looking at traditional beauty standards, so I know a lot of I read a lot of articles about, oh, these, like, super Photoshop models and stuff, but if you were to scroll my Instagram feed, a lot of it would be people promoting true beauty, people that are promoting unphotoshopped things, and so I think it's, like I've been reading a lot of psychology lately, and it's, like, crazy, like, input equals output, that sounds, like, so cheesy, it sounds yeah, but it's so true though, like, what you fill your mind with is so powerful, I know we talked about, like, the power of yet,
yes.
being able to rephrase your like thinking, for those of you who don't know, it's basically saying instead of your child saying I can't swim, you basically rephrase that to I can't swim yet. And at first I've heard this from Colleen and other people, and I thought it was the cheesiest thing, to be honest, until I actually started trying it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this it works so well. I've completely rephrased my mindset. My current thing is bachata and dancing. I'm an absolute terrible dancer, but I just say, you know what? I'm not a good dancer yet. I can't get this scroll down yet. And it just completely rephrases your mind the way you speak. It's really crazy.
I
Try it if
remember
you have not.
it's so funny. So a little quick backstory on that for those of you who are not members of the Learners Lab, and those of you who are members of the Learners Lab, go back and look in the archives for this activity that Samantha's talking about because she designed it for me. But we were in the Learners Lab. We tackle a new social and emotional skill every month, and we were doing perfectionism. And one of the activities that families could work on was the power of yet. And Samantha designed the worksheet for me. I gave her the like kind of specs and she made it pretty because I can come up with the specs, but I can't make things pretty. And she messaged me a couple days later and she's like, oh my gosh, I have been doing the power of yet since I designed that worksheet and it works. It was so funny. But again, it's a testimony to how simple little tweaks can make a
Yeah.
big difference no matter what our kids' ages are. This isn't like, okay, my gosh, I have a teenager now. I've ruined them and I
Mhm.
can never fix it or get them back. It doesn't matter if you've got tots or if you've got teens or even if you've got young adults, you can do some of these things and help kind of reshape their own self-image and sense of self. I was having this conversation with my oldest and something that you said, Samantha, reminded me of it. And it was like, how sometimes a lot of different sources bring you the same thing in a relatively short period of time, and you're like, okay, wait, I need to be thinking about this or talking about this because there's a reason that I keep hearing it from different sources. I was talking about it with my oldest. You said something that triggered it, and then I was also talking to another mom of young adults, Cindy West from No Sweat Nature Study, who's got kids very much like mine, and we were talking about that idea that so many what 19 to 26, 27-year olds think that everybody around them is further along than they are
Yeah.
and that everybody has a better place to live, a better relationship, a better
Yeah.
long-term job prospectus or whatever. And the truth is everybody is faking it. Everybody is falling apart. Everybody in that age range is still figuring it out and nobody, even the ones who look like it on social media, right? Having their green smoothies and the perfect, like normal sense of beauty. They're all just as insecure because everybody is seeing everybody else's highlight reel. And
Yeah.
everybody is struggling in those ages because it's hard to find places you can live and afford.
Yeah.
So some have multiple roommates in crappy places where ceilings are falling in.
Not
And
based on true events.
and then others, are still living with their parents. I have a friend whose child is living with them at 26, and mine, I've got a 21-year-old, and I
Yeah.
don't see neither she nor I see our kids moving out anytime soon, and that's okay. Everybody's at a
Yeah.
different point. So helping our kids remember, okay, you're not living in your own place yet. You don't have the job you've
Yeah.
always dreamed of yet. You don't have the relationship yet. It's so important. And we can do this. We can set foundations and revisit it as homeschoolers.
Absolutely, and even in my travels, I think that that mindset has come in handy a few times. So right now, I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty well traveled, and I'm very picky about who I'm traveling with. And one of the very like first traits I have on there is resilience and being willing to pivot if needed. So I've been in some situations with people where when everything is just going absolutely haywire, they just shut down and they just don't know what else to do next. And so I'm like, okay, you gotta get the problem solving thing out. You gotta remain calm. And I think that those skills can be taught like really young. And they don't have to be, even if your child doesn't end up traveling the world, I mean, those are skills that can be useful in any scenario.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit here, but I want to build on what we were talking about because it was something that you and I had mentioned when we were planning this episode, the idea of kind of being entrepreneurial or scrappy and affording things that you want, like travel
Oh,
or a
yeah.
place to live or stuff like this. So talk to me a little bit about, this homeschooled kid turned young adult who's doing an alternative type of lifestyle. How do you do it? How do you pay for all the things that you want to do, whether it's travel or like my son is a collector of tech and other stuff. We just got a couple $100 pull up bar contraption delivered to our house. Like how are you able to kind of do these things?
Absolutely. So, first off, I've never had any debt, which I'm very thankful for. And the second of all, my parents have not given me anything financially since I've been like 15 years old. So it has all come from learning color and just like living really thrifty. I think when people see, again, the social media highlight reels, they think, oh my gosh, she's like living the dream. And I am in a lot of different ways. I am not negating those. However, what you don't see, actually, if you follow me, you will see this. But I am staying in hostels. Recently, I had a friend tell me that she was in a hostel, a 16-bed hostel, because it was $10 a night versus the $100 a night hotel. And someone was throwing up next to her in the dorm room. So like those are just like little things. I had so many nights where I was sleeping in airports, which is something that not a lot of people would be comfortable with, but I did it because I was in expensive cities and it was cheap. A lot of the countries that I've chosen to go to have been very cost effective. I'm very thankful to be an American citizen, so the US dollar is very strong compared to other parts. So, for example, I was recently in Peru for a month, and the US dollar is a lot stronger there. So, I think just getting really creative with that is like that's another way creativity has helped me. People think like, oh my gosh, you're making tons of money, when in reality, I make less than some of my friends. I just choose to spend it on instead of going out, instead of buying new clothes, I choose to spend it on plane tickets. So just like little things like that.
Yeah, I love that. So let's take that to the homeschool moms who are listening. How can they help their kids prepare for maybe a life of entrepreneurship so that they can be flexible like you are? Like my
Budget,
so my
budget, budget, budget.
Yeah. So my oldest is an entrepreneur, and that is one area, right? That's a struggle is always is finding like the next gig or the next job or free,
Yeah,
especially if you're a freelancer. Whereas
yeah,
my next one who will be launching, after next year, she's a junior right now, is planning to go for a typical BFA type. Well, BFAs aren't as typical as like a BA or a BM or a BS or
yeah.
whatever, but it's still a college experience with specific hoops to jump through, though those hoops, I'll probably be talking about that a lot next year because the BFA process is way different and way involved,
Interesting.
but it's a very different process. So say you have a kid who is so far outside the box that no box is going to be able to contain them, even college or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you do? Like how do you help them so that they can be successful entrepreneurs?
I think what I know we talked about this a little bit in the previous one, but let your children learn. And I think that's so important. So the people I met traveling, a lot of them, it's a lot. So I know some people who don't have a steady roof over their head. So they legitimately do not have a full-time address. They are completely on the road. I have one friend who lives on the road every single month. She and her husband switches countries. That is a lot. It sounds so much fun, but if you think about the logistics of that, it's a lot. But these people did not fit in the traditional ways. A lot of them did not fit in the public school system. A lot of them had negative experiences, perhaps, like in that public school system. So let your children learn, because there are so many different opportunities out there that we talked about, like, just even careers out there. There's so many different opportunities that you might have not have any idea about, but there is a space for your child, even if they are so quirky. I mean, who could have imagined, like, a 15-year-old who loved learning, like, to blog about the Holocaust, like, would actually have a career doing travel, also learning about history, and, like, yeah, I feel like myself 10 years ago would have never been able to imagine that, because it was just so far from reality at the time. I struggled to make friends because I was super awkward and nerdy, and I liked talking with people that were triple, quadruple my age. But now I've been able to kind of grow into myself in a lot of different ways and foster a community environment that is accepting of the fact that I'm crazy, I have ADHD, and I like doing impulsive travel things. I foster community that allows me to experiment, be quirky, and just like express myself in an authentic way. And I think that is really helpful. And like you were just saying, if you don't have that community around you immediately, be that community for your child. Like, it does not have to come from something like big and grand. It can start as simple as in the home.
Yeah, I love that. And something that you said too, you were talking about being in community with people who are much older at one point, and then now where you're at in your life,
I have
you're
friends my age.
right. So that just I think that that's something that I know I don't even talk about it that much, though it is something that I live. My oldest did not have friends his age really until pretty recently. And
Same
I
for me.
think
I was about 21 years old when I made like my first like really good friend.
yeah, and
That was my age.
we don't remember that part of being a gifted, twice exceptional, or otherwise neurodivergent individual. We don't fit with our same age peers for a long, long time. And it's not
Yeah.
until we find same age peers who have the same interests. And you can't find that until you're an adult
Yeah.
because you're lumped with whatever ages are around you at a given time when you're young. And so, for those of you who are listening who have kids that don't have a lot of friends, it is actually okay to let them be friends with the next door neighbor who's 85 years old, or, grandpa, like I've talked about Trevor before, being best friends with Grandpa Lenny before he passed away, and all of the old train guys. It's okay to allow them to, it's okay to let them be friends with the people they're going to be friends with, no matter the age, but based on interests, and not worry, because it really truly does work out at some point. You find your
Yeah.
people, you find your thing. But going back to what we've talked about a few times here in various stages is our job as homeschool parents of really smart, really creative, really outside the box individuals is to honor the person who's in front of us and help
Yeah.
them cultivate that love of learning, that resilience, that creativity, that innovative thinking so that they can find where they belong in the future.
Mm. Absolutely. And that's a really good point what you mentioned before, like finding community in unlikely places. I think that I mean the way the public school is like groups students, like it really segregates them to that individual age. And I even know a couple of people around my age that they just have a very hard time relating to someone who's maybe 10 years older or 10 years younger to them. But it's because they don't know how to find that like common ground. But when you like are bonded by interest or something other than your geographical location or just circumstances, you can make those connections on such a deeper level. One thing that I've been very fortunate about is since moving to LA, I've been able to make friends very quickly, and that's surprising to a lot of people because it's a very spread out city and it's hard for people to make friends, which I'm not discounting people's experiences. But I think it's because I do know how to foster relationships really well, and I know how to look for people not based on their age or where they're from necessarily. It's based on our interests and based on what we like and our thoughts and beliefs. And I think that that goes a lot farther than, oh, okay, you're 25 too, let's be friends.
Right.
Like, if you're 45 years old and you like World War II, let's meet for coffee. We're gonna have so much to talk about.
I love that. Okay, we've got to wrap it up, though I could talk to you forever. How about we end it with think about and let parents know, like what would be the last kind of big takeaway you'd want them to have from this discussion or from your experiences and your travels and your life as an eclectic homeschooler who's gone down multiple different paths and is sitting here as a 25-year-old making her way in the world?
Oh gosh.
Put you on the spot.
I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail and don't be afraid to try something if something's not working. So there's been several times in my life in my homeschool journey where the path that I was currently on just wasn't working. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe this homeschool curriculum was not fitting with my learning style. Maybe I just didn't like the professor teaching it or something. That's okay. Find something that works for you. I think with the power of the internet, there's so many different opportunities out there. Find that curriculum that works for you. Find that activity that just clicks with your child. If you're having trouble finding something that motivates them, if you're having trouble finding their friends, like just keep trying. And it's okay to keep pivoting and it's okay to fail in that process because you will have a lot of failures, but it is okay.
I love that. Okay, I have one more putting you on the spot thing. Now, speak as a 25-year-old who wasn't a teen that long ago and tell, like, what would you say to 14, 15, 16-year-old Samantha who was very introverted and very perfectionistic and did not like to make mistakes and wasn't sure she was going to be able to find friends or a place in the world because I am really off the charts and quirky. Talk to that teen who just doesn't think that they're ever going to find their person or their people or make friends or whatever.
So this brings me back to a time I was I was 18. I was something around that age range. And I invited a group of people to an event that typically was like custom for whatever, and no one showed up. I was so devastated. Like I came home to my mom, I cried. I'm not a huge crier. My mom knew I was like so upset. But it's crazy. Like recently, like I had like a sushi party with my friends here who all like traveling. They're all very eclectic in their jobs. Two of my really good friends recently quit their jobs to travel full time because they had all this money saved up and they're in a new stage of their life. So I think I would just tell baby Samantha, it's okay, like keep going. One of my favorite movies is Meet the Robinsons for a variety of reasons. Yeah, keep moving forward. It's so cheesy, but I love it so much.
It's not cheesy. I think that it's important for those simple truths to be repeated again and again and again for our kids, because especially us as parents, double your age. It's been a long time since I've been that person, though sometimes I am still that quirky, doesn't quite fit in person I always was. And I have to remind myself, like, it's okay to not be good at this. And it's okay that, the moms at that group call each other to go out for coffee and don't call me because, whatever. It's okay. So I think that that's important to repeat for kids all the time. So.
And I think also just acknowledging that hurt is really important too. Like I think it's okay to feel hurt, upset, and going back with like the fear of like with failure, it's okay to fail. So like you're talking about the startup. The startup is not going well, to be honest, because I ran into a bunch of tech issues and I don't have the stamina to pursue it. And it's okay to say I learned a lot from that incident and it's not going well / might have failed. And then in the instance when you are not invited to coffee or something, it is okay to feel that hurt and to realize, hey, this didn't work out. I'm gonna be sad, but I can also tomorrow try again or make new friends or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so smart. Gosh, you're so wise for 25.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Whatever it is, it's working. I love talking to you. All right, so we've got to wrap up, though. Like I said, we could talk forever. So thank you for coming back on. We'll have to have you back up like every couple of years just to see how you're doing and check in with you. But I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
All right, so we'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode. But in the meantime, you can go to the show notes for this episode, raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And you can find links to all of Samantha's social media and her websites and some links to resources that can help you with an outside the box quirky thinker who might be a little bit more entrepreneurial or differently oriented when it comes to like their future and high school and things like that. So we'll make sure there's lots of resources there for you. In the meantime, I hope you have a great week with your kids and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.